My name is Remy Churchill. This is my story. I was 12 years old. It was a Saturday evening when I suddenly came down with the worst headache I have ever had. I was too ill to share a pizza that had been ordered. Pizza was a rare treat in our household that I would normally be excited to have a share. On this evening, I was in such intense pain with a feeling of dizziness that I asked to go to bed. For a few hours, the pain in my head prevented me from sleeping, and then I finally drifted off. I awoke the following day feeling worse, with a terrible headache and no relief from the aspirin I was taking. I experienced waves of nausea, a strong feeling of disorientation, alternating fever and chills. I slept through most of the day and remember waking up the following Wednesday with no memory at all of the time that had elapsed from the previous Sunday. At the time I awoke, I was so weak and crying in pain that it took me a very long time to get out of bed. When I did, and stood up, immediately I collapsed back on the bed from dizziness and weakness. I got up again, held the walls for support, and looked in the mirror. I was shocked at how my appearance had changed. My skin was white, my eye sockets were so dark that they stood in sharp relief against my pale skin. What really freaked me out, however, is that my teeth had changed color. They were now almost black. I made my way to the hallway and grabbed the railing along the staircase to support my body. I literally could not stand on my own. I got to the staircase landing. My vision distorted the stairway where it appeared it didn't end, but I knew I had to get down the stairs because my life depended on seeing a doctor. I was so dizzy I knew I wouldn't make it down the stairs without falling, so I sat on the top step, stretched myself out, and slid over the stair risers until I had finally reached the bottom of the stairs. My grandmother was in the kitchen, so I called out to her and begged her to call an ambulance, and that I needed a doctor immediately. My grandmother called a taxi, got some clothes for me, and we went to the doctor. All the other people in the waiting room were shocked by how bad I looked that they insisted the doctor see me before they were seen. As my grandmother stayed in the waiting room, I went into the doctor's office. He asked me what was wrong. Because I found it difficult to speak, I just started to cry. I was very disoriented and overwhelmed, and begged for his help. He examined me, took my temperature, and collected blood and urine samples. Then I was asked to wait while he asked my grandmother to come into his office and shut the door. They were in there for what seemed a lengthy period of time. Finally, I was given a prescription of penicillin and something for the horrible, hacking cough, and my grandmother was instructed to notify him immediately should my condition become worse. I had a fever of 103. I was badly dehydrated and painfully thin. If my condition didn't improve by the weekend, he was ready to admit me to hospital. At home, I stayed downstairs on the couch because my grandmother wanted to keep an eye on me, and I was too weak to climb the stairs. Over the next few days, my condition improved, and by the following Monday, I said I could go to school. I went to school for a few days, where all the other kids didn't want to sit near me, and some commented on how terrible I looked. I had stopped taking the medication that Monday, thinking I didn't need it anymore. Apparently, the school had been notified the previous week that I was gravely ill, and some of the kids were told I might not be back. The teacher told me it was too soon for me to come back to school. After a few days of not taking the medication, I relapsed and had to stay home again. This is where the NDE comes in. I was sleeping, and it was the wee hours of the morning. I felt terrible, struggled to breathe, and was experiencing the same awful headache and the fever again. I was in too much pain to sleep, and stayed awake to the point of exhaustion, and drifted off. I thought I was having a dream. I was in a blue kind of darkness, and a young man materialized, seeming to float above me. He wore a white shift of some sort, but it was like I could see through him at the same time. He beckoned me to come with him, and that he wouldn't hurt me. I took his hand and felt myself rise from my bed towards the ceiling. I looked down and saw my curled up figure at the foot of the bed. The man said that we didn't have much time left. I told him I wanted to say goodbye to my family. It was as if he allowed me to float over my sister's bed, where I sent my love. I then floated through the wall to my brother's room, where all three were fast asleep. I descended and slipped through the floorboards and hovered above where my grandmother slept, and immediately was pulled back upstairs, where the man again took my hand, and we flew through the window in my brother's room. I felt completely safe and loved and protected by my companion as we floated over the neighborhood, heading east. I saw the tops of houses, and then we were at the front walkway of a house similar to those we passed over. We floated through the front door. Inside this house, I felt enveloped by love and compassion. The feeling was overwhelming. There were people there that I knew, a deceased grandmother I had never met, my paternal grandfather, but I couldn't see them, although I saw other people which I felt some strange spiritual connection. I felt a joy like I had never felt in my life. Towards the back of the house was a room where an intense light filtered in around the cracks in the door. Immediately, I was attracted to this room and wanted to find out what was on the other side. A nearby spirit opened the door, and the most amazing lightness and joy filled my heart. I was literally enveloped in love, if that can be visualized. I looked not directly into the intense light, but around it, where human beings, and perhaps not human, were joyfully reunited with each other. I wanted so much to go through this door, but someone there told me that I couldn't, and that it wasn't my time yet. I pleaded to see God, and had a discussion on existence that was too sophisticated for any 12-year-old to begin to comprehend. It was like I was communicating telepathically all along during this experience with those around me. I was arguing my case, but to no avail. I was told that I would have to go back, that if I were to pass through the door, I would never see my family again, and that my fate might not be similar to those who frolicked in joy and love on the other side. I was also told that, even though life was hard up to that point, my life in the future would be hard as well. I had to live this life, as that was my fate. The same young man who took me to this place again materialized, and hurried me, saying that I must return immediately. At the same time I saw an older man, in a suit. He wasn't shadowy, but fully visible to me. He looked over his shoulder at me. I asked my companion who he was. "He's your husband," my companion replied. I said, "No way, he's an old guy." I silently resolved I was not going to marry him. All of a sudden, I felt myself traveling at a very frightening speed through space, and then boom, I could actually hear myself stop dead. I opened my eyes to my sister shaking me as my grandmother stood in my bedroom behind her. She felt the same force as my soul returned to my body. I burst into tears and was completely incoherent. I stayed home from school for about the next week until it was safe for me to attend school again, and this time I was ordered to take my medications until they were gone. I had no problem with this. It was a beautiful experience, but also scary. I was emotionally labile for quite a while afterwards. It was like I had gained wisdom that other kids my age didn't have. It definitely helped to shape the person I am today. Watch this near-death experience next about a woman who was shown her future kids in the afterlife. You don't want to miss it.